was a typical Friday evening and I was lounging on the couch, scrolling through my phone while Ethan, my boyfriend of 4 years, sat across from me, immersed in his laptop. We had a comfortable routine. Movie nights on Fridays, brunch on Sundays, and a shared dream of building a life together. Or so I thought. Ethan had always been the steady force in my life. He was kind, patient, and dependable, or at least that's the version of him I'd fallen in love with. He'd been my rock during difficult times, the person I could turn to when the world felt too heavy. And then there was Lily, my younger sister. She was my best friend, my confidant, and the one person I trusted unconditionally. Despite our occasional sibling bickering, we were inseparable. But that evening something felt off. Ethan was unusually quiet, his focus on his laptop almost too intense. Every time I asked him a question, his responses were curt and distracted. I chalked it up to work stress. He'd been working long hours recently, or so he'd told me. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to mask the concern in my voice. "Yeah, just some deadlines," he replied without looking up. I wanted to believe him. I really did. Later that night, as Ethan went to take a shower, his laptop remained open on the coffee table. I don't know what compelled me to glance at it. Maybe it was intuition, or maybe it was the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. But as my eyes skimmed over the screen, I saw it. A message notification from Lily. At first, I thought it was harmless. Lily and Ethan were friendly, of course. They'd known each other for years through me. But as I clicked on the message, curiosity getting the better of me, my heart dropped. "Last night was amazing. I can't stop thinking about you." My stomach twisted. I scrolled up, my hands shaking, reading the thread of messages between them. Each word felt like a dagger, piercing deeper and deeper into my chest. "I love you. I can't wait to see you again. She doesn't deserve you." I couldn't breathe. The words blurred on the screen as tears welled up in my eyes. It felt like the ground beneath me had disappeared, leaving me suspended in a void of disbelief and agony. When Ethan emerged from the bathroom, I was still sitting there, the laptop open in front of me. He froze when he saw my face, and in that moment he knew. "What is this, Ethan?" My voice was trembling, barely above a whisper. He didn't deny it. He didn't even try. Said he stammered. I didn't mean for you to find out like this. Didn't mean for me to find out." I snapped, my voice rising. "That's all you have to say? You've been cheating on me with my sister?" Ethan's silence spoke louder than any words could. I grabbed my phone and called Lily, desperate for some kind of explanation, some justification for the unimaginable betrayal. When she answered, her tone was casual, as if nothing had happened. But when I confronted her, her response was cold and unapologetic. "It just happened," she said flatly. "You weren't enough for him, and he deserves to be happy." Her words were like poison, seeping into my veins and leaving me paralyzed with anger and pain. I hung up the phone, my hands trembling, my chest heaving with sobs. That night, I packed my things and left the apartment I'd shared with Ethan. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay. The pain was unbearable, a searing ache that consumed me. I felt betrayed not just by Ethan but by Lily, the two people I trusted most in the world. Days turned into weeks, and the reality of their betrayal began to sink in. Ethan and Lily didn't try to hide their relationship. In fact, they flaunted it, posting pictures together on social media and attending family events as a couple. I stopped going to those events, unable to face the humiliation and pain of seeing them together. A year later, I heard through a family member that they were getting married. The news hit me like a freight train, reopening wounds I thought had begun to heal. I couldn't bring myself to attend the wedding. The idea of watching them exchange vows was unbearable. I tried to focus on rebuilding my life. I moved to a new city, started a new job, and threw myself into my work. But the scars of their betrayal lingered. Every time I tried to trust someone, every time I felt the faint stirrings of love, their faces would appear in my mind, reminding me of what I had lost. For years I carried the weight of their betrayal, struggling to let go of the pain. I told myself I didn't care, that I was better off without them. But deep down, a part of me still longed for closure, for some kind of justice. Little did I know the universe had its own plans. After I left Ethan and Lily behind, I felt like I had to rebuild myself from the ashes. Every piece of my life felt like it had been shattered, and I didn't know where to begin putting it back together. Moving to a new city seemed like the right first step. A clean slate, away from the memories that haunted me at every turn. But what I didn't know was that my pain wasn't just emotional, it was physical too. In the months after the breakup, I was exhausted all the time. At first, I chalked it up to stress. After all, betrayal and heartbreak take their toll. But soon I started feeling nauseous every morning, and waves of dizziness would hit me without warning. My body was screaming at me, but I ignored it, too focused on trying to survive. One evening, as I was finishing up my shift at my new job, a wave of sharp pain shot through my abdomen. It was so intense that I doubled over, clutching the edge of my desk to steady myself. My coworker noticed and rushed to my side, insisting I go to the hospital. I tried to protest, but the pain was unbearable. At the hospital, the doctors ran a series of tests. I could tell from their faces that something was wrong, but they wouldn't tell me anything until the results came back. Hours later, a doctor entered my room with a clipboard in hand and a serious expression on her face. "You're experiencing complications from pregnancy," she said gently. My heart stopped. "What?" I managed to whisper. "That's impossible. I didn't even know I was pregnant." The doctor explained that I was in the early stages of pregnancy, but that the stress and physical strain I'd been under had caused severe complications. My body was under so much pressure that it had gone into premature labor. Labor? I couldn't process what she was saying. I wasn't just pregnant. I was about to have a baby. Everything after that felt like a blur. Nurses rushed around me, prepping me for an emergency procedure. My mind was racing, trying to make sense of it all. How had I not known? How could I have been so blind to what was happening to my own body? When I woke up, the room was quiet and a nurse was sitting by my bedside. She told me that the delivery had been successful, but that the baby had been taken to the neonatal unit for monitoring. I asked if I could see the baby, but she hesitated. "There was an arrangement made," she said carefully. "Your family was contacted." Confused and still groggy from the procedure, I didn't understand what she meant. My family? Why would they have been contacted? Then it clicked. Lily. The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. She and Ethan must have been notified by the hospital, and they must have come. Panic surged through me as I demanded to know where my baby was. The nurse tried to calm me, explaining that I needed to rest, but I couldn't. I needed to know what was happening. Hours later, I finally got an answer. Ethan had come to the hospital and signed some paperwork, claiming the baby as his and Lily's. He told the staff that I was in no condition to care for a child and that he and Lily would take responsibility. I was too weak to fight. My body had been through too much, and my mind was reeling from the shock of everything that had happened. Before I could process it, my baby was gone, and Ethan and Lily had left the hospital with him. Ethan and Lily told everyone that Lily had given birth. They crafted an elaborate lie, pretending that she had been pregnant all along. They claimed the baby as their own and started their new life as a family, while I was left to recover alone. The betrayal cut deeper than anything I had ever experienced. Not only had they stolen Ethan from me, but now they had taken my child. And yet I didn't have the strength to fight back. At that moment I felt powerless, like a pawn in their twisted game. I left the hospital a week later, determined to move on with my life. I told myself that this was my chance to start over, that I didn't need Ethan, Lily, or anyone else to find happiness. But deep down, a part of me ached for the child I'd never gotten to hold, the life that had been stolen from me before it even began. I poured myself into my work, trying to fill the void left by everything I had lost. I moved to a new apartment, changed my phone number, and cut off contact with anyone who reminded me of Ethan and Lily. I wanted to erase them from my life completely, to pretend that none of it had ever happened. But the scars remained. Every time I saw a baby in a stroller or heard a child laughing, my heart would ache. I wondered what my baby looked like, what kind of personality he had, what kind of life he was living. Did he even know I existed? Did Ethan and Lily tell him the truth, or was he growing up believing a lie? As the years passed, I tried to convince myself that it didn't matter. My life was better without them. I was stronger, more independent, and more resilient than I had ever been. But no matter how hard I tried to move on, the pain lingered like a shadow, always just beneath the surface. Years passed, and I had worked hard to build a life I could be proud of. I had a steady job, a cozy apartment, and a small but reliable circle of friends. I wasn't rich and I wasn't in a fairy tale romance, but I was content. I had carefully stitched my life back together, piece by piece. Ethan and Lily were ghosts of my past, and though the pain they caused still lingered, I thought I'd buried them for good. That illusion shattered one sunny afternoon at a family gathering I'd been hesitant to attend. My mother had called me days earlier, insisting that I come to a barbecue she was hosting at her house. I had politely declined at first, as I often did when it came to family events. Seeing them always risked reopening old wounds. My mother, however, was persistent. "It's been years, sweetheart," she said gently. "You can't avoid the family forever. Besides, Lily and Ethan won't bite." Her words stung more than I cared to admit, but I reluctantly agreed. A part of me hoped enough time had passed to dull the sharp edges of our shared history. When I arrived, the yard was bustling with relatives I hadn't seen in ages. Kids ran around laughing, the smell of grilled burgers wafted through the air, and my mother waved to me from the patio, her face lighting up with delight. But as I stepped further into the yard, I froze. There they were, Lily and Ethan. They were standing near the grill, smiling and chatting with my uncle, their bodies angled toward each other in a way that made my stomach churn. Time had been kind to both of them. Lily looked polished in a flowing sundress, her hair perfectly styled, while Ethan still had that effortlessly confident demeanor I'd once fallen for. For a moment I considered leaving. But before I could act, my mother spotted me and called out, "Lily, then, look who's here." I cursed under my breath as their heads turned in unison. Lily's eyes widened slightly before narrowing, and Ethan's face froze in a mix of surprise and discomfort. "Hi," I said stiffly, forcing a smile as they approached. "It's been a while," Lily said, her tone overly sweet, as if she were trying to prove how much better her life was. "Yes, it has," I replied, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. Then out of the corner of my eye, I saw him, a little boy maybe 6 years old, running toward Lily and Ethan. "Mommy, Daddy," he called, his voice full of excitement as he wrapped his arms around Lily's leg. My heart skipped a beat. The boy had dark brown hair that curled slightly at the ends, a sharp jawline that seemed far too mature for a child his age, and piercing green eyes. My green eyes. I blinked, my breath catching in my throat. For a moment, it felt like the world had gone silent, the bustling sounds of the barbecue fading into the background. Lily noticed my gaze and placed a protective hand on the boy's shoulder. "This is Liam," she said casually, as if daring me to question her. Liam looked up at me, his wide green eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Hi," he said cheerfully. I opened my mouth to respond, but no words came out. I couldn't stop staring at him, my mind racing. His features, his expressions, even the way he tilted his head slightly to the side. It was like looking into a mirror. Ethan stepped in quickly, putting a hand on Liam's head and ruffling his hair. "Why don't you go play with the other kids?" he suggested, his voice unusually tight. Liam nodded and ran off, leaving me standing there frozen in place. I spent the rest of the barbecue in a daze, barely able to focus on conversations or food. My mind kept replaying the moment I saw Liam. The resemblance was too strong to ignore. It wasn't just the color of his eyes, it was the shape of his nose, the way his eyebrows arched when he was curious, even the way he smiled. It wasn't just in my head. That little boy looked exactly like me. As the day wore on, I caught myself stealing glances at him, watching the way he interacted with the other kids, the way he laughed and played. Every time I saw him, the ache in my chest grew stronger. Finally, as the sun began to set and people started to leave, I cornered my mother in the kitchen. "Who is Liam?" I asked bluntly, my voice trembling. She looked surprised. "Liam? He's Lily and Ethan's son, of course." "Of course," I echoed, my heart pounding. "How old is he?" She thought for a moment. 6, I think. He was born not long after they got married. I did the math in my head, my stomach twisting into knots. 6 years ago. Right after the breakup. Right after I left. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying everything in my mind. The timeline, the resemblance, the way Ethan had looked at me at the barbecue. It all felt too coincidental. But even as doubt crept in, I couldn't bring myself to believe it fully. It was impossible, wasn't it? There was no way Liam could be my son. And yet, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered, "What if he is?" I tried to push the thought away, telling myself I was being paranoid. But deep down I knew I couldn't let it go. I needed answers. I decided to stay in town for a few days, claiming I wanted to spend more time with family. In reality, I was buying time to observe, to gather clues, to figure out the truth. Sleep was impossible. No matter how much I tried to dismiss the thought, the resemblance between Liam and me was undeniable. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw his green eyes staring back at me, his smile, A mirror of my own childhood photos. The timeline didn't lie either. Liam was 6, which meant he had been born right after I had been hospitalized. The dots were connecting themselves and the picture forming in my mind was terrifying. Could it really be possible that Liam was my son? I had left town years ago thinking I was escaping from my past, but now, standing at the edge of a truth I wasn't ready to face, I felt like my past had come looking for me instead. I needed answers. The next day, I made it my mission to spend more time around Liam without drawing suspicion. I casually helped my mother set up dinner, making sure to sit at the table where he and the other kids were eating. As I observed him, the details became more impossible to ignore. He had the same nervous habit I did, twisting a lock of his hair when he was thinking. He wrinkled his nose in confusion just like I did when I was a child. And the way he tilted his head when he listened to someone speak? That was pure déjà vu. But what sealed my suspicion was his birthmark. A small, faint mark just above his wrist. I had the exact same one. My breath caught in my throat. I had read somewhere that birthmarks could be genetic. Could this be another clue? Or was I losing my mind? I needed more than observations. I needed something concrete. Later that evening, as I was helping clear the table, I saw an opportunity. Lily had left her phone unattended on the kitchen counter. My heart pounded as I stole a quick glance over my shoulder. She was outside talking to Ethan, her back turned. I had seconds, maybe less. My fingers trembled as I unlocked her phone. It was the same passcode she had used for years. Some habits never changed. I quickly navigated to her photos, scrolling through endless pictures of her pregnancy with Liam. Something felt off. The pictures were too perfect, posed, staged as if she had gone out of her way to prove something. There were no ultrasound images, no candid shots of her holding her belly at home. Then I found something even more damning. A folder labeled hospital records. I opened it, my pulse pounding in my ears. Inside was a single document. A birth certificate. Liam's birth certificate. Mother's name, Lily Carter. Father's name, Ethan Carter. Date of birth, March 2nd. March 2nd. I did the math. That was exactly 6 months after my hospital stay. My mind reeled. A 6-month pregnancy? Impossible. Babies weren't born that early and survived without complications. Which meant Lily hadn't given birth to Liam. I had. I staggered back, my hands shaking. My vision blurred as I tried to comprehend the betrayal. My own sister had stolen my child. My own ex had helped her cover it up. A wave of nausea hit me as the memories of my hospital stay resurfaced. How disoriented I had been, how the nurses had kept me sedated after my emergency delivery. They had known. Ethan and Lily had known from the very beginning. And they had lied. They had taken my baby while I was unconscious, while I was too weak to fight back. I clenched my fists, my breathing ragged. My son, was living a life built on lies. I had to do something. The rage inside me was too strong to contain. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I slipped outside, my feet moving on their own toward the house Ethan and Lily shared. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. I knocked on the door hard. A few seconds later, Ethan answered, looking surprised. "You're here late," he said cautiously. I didn't waste time. "Liam is my son," I spat, my voice shaking with fury. "You and Lily stole him from me." Ethan's face drained of color. For a long moment he said nothing, his grip tightening on the doorframe. "I don't know what you're talking about," he finally muttered, avoiding my eyes. "Don't you dare lie to me," I snapped. "I found the birth certificate. March 2nd. I did the math. There is no way in hell Lily gave birth to him." Ethan exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. He looked trapped. "Listen," he started, but I cut him off. "Tell me the truth," I demanded. Did you know? Did you know all this time that Liam was mine?" Silence. Then finally he whispered, "Yes." My knees almost gave out beneath me. Ethan inhaled shakily, rubbing his face like he was trying to wake from a nightmare. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," he muttered. "Lily, she was the one who, she said you'd never be able to take care of him. She said you'd be better off not knowing. She said." I laughed bitterly. "And you just went along with it?" Ethan met my gaze, guilt flashing in his eyes. "I didn't know what to do," he admitted. "You were gone. Lily told me she could give him a better life." My hands shook with rage. "So you let her claim my child as hers?" He hesitated. Then he nodded. I couldn't breathe. My own sister had taken my son, and Ethan, the man who had once claimed to love me, had let it happen. I took a deep breath, forcing my emotions into submission. I want him back, I said. I don't care what you and Lily want. He is mine and I will get him back. Ethan swallowed hard. You can't just. I can, I interrupted. And I will. I turned on my heel, walking away from the house and toward the truth that would finally set me free. Lily had taken everything from me once. I wouldn't let her do it again. The night after confronting Ethan, I barely slept. My mind raced with every possible scenario, every outcome of what was to come. I had uncovered the ultimate betrayal, but uncovering the truth wasn't enough. I had to do something about it. My son was out there, living in a house filled with lies, growing up calling another woman mom when I was his real mother. I needed justice. And I needed my child back. But first I had to confront the person who had orchestrated it all. The next morning I stood in front of Lily's house, my fists clenched at my sides. The anger burning inside me was uncontainable, fueling my every step. I knocked hard. After a few moments the door opened. Lily stood there in her perfectly pressed dress, her hair styled in soft waves, the picture of a composed and loving wife. But I knew the truth now. Her face faltered for a moment when she saw me standing there, my expression filled with nothing but fury. Surprised to see me? I asked, my voice sharp as a knife. Lily gave me a forced smile. What are you doing here? I took a step forward, my blood boiling as I whispered, I know everything. For a brief moment, fear flashed in her eyes. But then she straightened her posture, folding her arms across her chest, masking her panic with indifference. I don't know what you're talking about, she said coolly. I laughed. A bitter, humorless laugh. Don't play dumb, Lily. I know Liam is my son. I know you stole him from me. I know you lied to everyone. Lily's face hardened. Lower your voice, she hissed, glancing over her shoulder. The neighbors will hear. Let them hear, I snapped. Let them hear how you took advantage of me when I was unconscious in a hospital bed. Let them hear how you convinced Ethan to steal my child. Let them hear what kind of monster you really are. Her expression cracked for the first time. A flicker of unease crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with defiance. You weren't ready to be a mother, she said, her voice laced with calculated cruelty. You had nothing. No job, no stability. You would have been a terrible mother. Ethan and I gave Liam a life you could never provide. I took a step closer, my entire body trembling with rage. You stole my child, I said, my voice dangerously low. You ripped him away from me and you think you're the hero? Lily lifted her chin. He doesn't even know who you are, she said smugly. To him I'm his mother. And you're nothing. Something inside me snapped. I lunged forward before I could stop myself, shoving her back. She gasped, stumbling slightly, but I didn't care. You don't get to decide that, I growled. You don't get to take my son and erase me from his life. For the first time Lily looked rattled. She hadn't expected me to fight back. But I wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. Before Lily could say another word, Ethan appeared in the doorway, his face pale, his jaw tight. He had heard everything. For the first time since I had confronted him, I saw something new in his expression. Regret. Lily, he said, his voice unsteady. Enough. Lily spun toward him. You're taking her side now? He exhaled shakily, running a hand through his hair. We can't keep this up forever. She knows. And she has every right to be angry. Lily's face twisted in fury. She gave up that right when she left. I didn't leave, I shot back. You took my baby from me. You let me believe I had lost him. Ethan swallowed hard, his eyes darting between us. He looked like a man on the verge of breaking apart. Just stop, he murmured, rubbing his temple. I can't do this anymore. Lily narrowed her eyes. You're weak, she spat. You always have been. Ethan looked at me then, his expression pained. I should have told you the truth, he admitted. But I was scared. And I let Lily convince me it was for the best. You let her steal my child, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. Ethan's face crumpled. I know. It wasn't an excuse. It wasn't enough. But for the first time I saw remorse in his eyes. Lily let out a bitter laugh. You're both pathetic, she sneered. Do you really think you can just take him away from me now? He's my son. I stepped forward, my hands clenching into fists. "He is not your son," I said. "And I will do whatever it takes to make sure he knows the truth." Lily's expression twisted into one of pure hatred. "You're not going to win," she whispered, her voice dripping with venom. I met her gaze, my own ice cold. "Watch me." That night I hired a lawyer. I wasn't just going to fight for Liam, I was going to take back what was mine. The road ahead was going to be brutal. Lily and Ethan had connections, money, and years of lies on their side. But I had something stronger, the truth. And I was ready to burn their world to the ground. Filing for custody wasn't just about legal documents and court hearings. It was about proving the truth. I needed undeniable evidence, something that not even Lily's manipulations could twist or dismiss. DNA test. But I knew Lily would never willingly agree to it. She would fight this with everything she had. If I wanted to get proof, I had to be smart. I had to find a way to get Liam's DNA. The next time I saw Liam was at my mother's house. She had invited the family over for dinner, a gathering meant to bring everyone together. But I had my own agenda. I arrived early, making sure to stay calm and composed, hiding the storm brewing inside me. The last thing I needed was for Lily to suspect that I was planning something. As soon as Liam ran up to greet me with his usual bright smile, my heart clenched. I knelt down to his level, forcing myself to keep my voice steady. "Hey there, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. His green eyes sparkled. "Are you staying for dinner?" I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Of course. I wouldn't miss it. Lily was across the room watching me like a hawk. She didn't trust me, and with good reason. She knew I was up to something. But she had no idea what. And that was my advantage. Halfway through dinner, I saw my opportunity. Liam was sitting next to me, happily munching on a piece of bread. I watched as he took a sip from his glass of water, his small hands leaving fingerprints on the cup. That was it. I glanced at Lily. She was distracted, engaged in conversation with my aunt. Quickly and carefully, I reached for Liam's cup, pretending to adjust the table setting as I slid it into my bag. My heart pounded as I forced a casual smile, acting as if nothing had happened. Liam didn't even notice. But Ethan did. His gaze flickered to my bag, his jaw tightening. For a moment I thought he might say something, but instead he looked away. He didn't stop me. And in that moment I realized something important. Ethan wanted me to have the truth. The next day I took the glass to a private DNA testing lab. I paid extra for expedited results, but even that meant waiting a full week. A week of pure hell. Every day felt like an eternity. I couldn't focus on work, couldn't sleep. My thoughts were consumed with what-ifs. What if I was wrong? What if I had let my emotions cloud my judgment? What if this was all in my head? But deep down I knew. I had seen the resemblance. Felt the connection. Liam was mine. And soon I would have proof. When the test results finally arrived, I sat in my car staring at the envelope in my hands. My fingers trembled as I tore it open, scanning the page, my breath catching in my throat. 99.9% match. The paper blurred as my vision swam with tears. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I was right all along. Liam was my son. And now nothing could stop me from getting him back. Holding the DNA results in my hands felt surreal. This was it, the undeniable proof that Liam was my son. I had spent years unknowingly mourning a child I thought I'd lost, only to find out he had been right in front of me all along. And now I was done waiting. I was done letting Lily and Ethan control the narrative. It was time for them to face the truth. I didn't bother calling. They didn't deserve a warning. I drove straight to Lily and Ethan's house, gripping the envelope so tightly my knuckles turned white. My pulse was pounding, adrenaline coursing through me as I parked outside their picture-perfect suburban home. I walked up to the door, my heart racing. I was ready. I knocked loudly. A few moments later, the door swung open and Lily stood there, her expression instantly turning icy. "What do you want?" she asked, her tone sharp, defensive. Ethan appeared behind her, his face tense as if he already knew why I was there. I didn't waste time. I held up the DNA test results. "We need to talk. Now." Lily's eyes darted to the envelope in my hand, and for the first time, I saw real fear flash across her face. Lily and Ethan had no choice but to let me inside. We moved to the living room where I placed the envelope on the coffee table and slid it toward them. "Open it," I said, my voice eerily calm. Lily hesitated, but Ethan reached for it first. His fingers trembled slightly as he pulled out the document and began reading. His face drained of color. Lily snatched it from him, her eyes scanning the words frantically. I watched as her breathing became uneven, her carefully constructed world crumbling before her eyes. I leaned forward, my voice cold as steel. You stole my son. Lily's mouth opened and closed, struggling to find words. For the first time she was speechless. Ethan finally spoke, his voice hoarse. You did the test. Damn right I did, I snapped. And now there's no way you can lie your way out of this. Lily slammed the paper down on the table, her hands shaking. So what? She hissed. You think you can just waltz in here and take him away from us? I shot up from my seat. He's not yours to keep, Lily. He never was. You took advantage of me when I was at my weakest. You lied to everyone and you let me believe my own child didn't exist. Lily's face twisted in pure rage. You were a mess back then. You had nothing. No job, no home. You would have been a terrible mother. Ethan and I gave him a life you never could have. Her words were like gasoline on a fire. I clenched my fists, barely holding back my anger. You don't get to decide that. You don't get to take a child that isn't yours just because you think you deserve him more. Lily's expression faltered, but she quickly masked it with defiance. Liam doesn't even know you. To him, I'm his mother. I took a step closer, my eyes locked onto hers. That's going to change. While Lily was still in full defensive mode, I turned to Ethan. You knew, I said, my voice quieter now but full of betrayal. Ethan couldn't look at me. His hands were clenched, his jaw tight. You let this happen, I continued. You could have stopped it but you didn't. Why? Ethan swallowed hard. His voice was barely above a whisper. I was a coward. I laughed bitterly. That's putting it lightly. Ethan finally met my eyes and for the first time I saw genuine remorse. I should have told you the truth, he admitted. I wanted to, but Lily, she convinced me it was for the best. He told me you were better off not knowing. That it would only hurt you. I let out a breath, shaking my head. You think keeping my son from me was protecting me? Ethan looked broken. No. I was protecting myself. I didn't want to face what we did. Well, congratulations, I said bitterly. Now you have to. Lily suddenly stood, her eyes wild. You won't win, she spat. You think just because you have some piece of paper you can take him away? I raised him. I'm the one he calls mom. You're nothing to him. I clenched my jaw. We'll see what a judge has to say about that. Lily's face paled slightly. She wasn't stupid. She knew that legally this was damning. But she was too stubborn to back down. You're making a mistake, she said, her voice dripping with venom. You're going to ruin his life. I stepped toward her, my voice steady. The only people who ruined anything were you and Ethan. And now it's over. Lily stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. Ethan sat down heavily, running a hand over his face. What happens now? I exhaled, my hands shaking slightly. Now. I fight for my son. And neither of you can stop me. That night I contacted my lawyer. I filed for custody of Liam, presenting the DNA results as undeniable proof that he was mine. It was going to be a long fight. Lily and Ethan weren't going to give up easily. But I wasn't afraid anymore. For years they had stolen my son from me. Now I was taking him back. No matter what it took. Filing for custody wasn't just about proving I was Liam's biological mother. It was about proving that I was the best person to raise him. And that wasn't going to be easy. Lily and Ethan had raised him for 6 years. To the world, they were his parents. On paper, they had a stable home, financial security, and years of parental history. Meanwhile, I had spent those years completely absent. Not by choice, but that didn't change how it looked to a judge. I was in for the fight of my life. But I refused to back down. The first step was getting the courts involved. My lawyer filed the paperwork immediately, presenting the DNA results as irrefutable proof that I was Liam's mother. We requested an emergency custody hearing, arguing that I had been denied my rights due to Ethan and Lily's deliberate deception. Lily, of course, fought back viciously. She hired an expensive lawyer, using every resource she had to paint me as an unfit mother. She was never there for Liam, she screamed in court. I was the one who raised him, the one who loved him. She's just some stranger. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to stay composed. She wasn't going to break me. I looked directly at the judge and spoke, my voice steady but full of emotion. I was lied to, I said. I was robbed of my son. If I had known, if I had been given the chance, I never would have left him. But I wasn't given a choice. Lily and Ethan made that choice for me. The courtroom fell silent. Even Ethan, who had spent most of the trial avoiding my gaze, finally looked at me. For the first time I saw shame in his eyes. The judge ordered a custody evaluation, meaning that a court-appointed evaluator would investigate both households to determine what was best for Liam. Liam was going to be observed. His environment, his emotional state, his relationship with both Lily and me. The truth was finally coming out. The evaluator visited my home first. I had spent weeks preparing, making sure everything was perfect. His potential bedroom, his toys, even small details like making sure my fridge was stocked with the snacks I knew he liked. I sat across from the evaluator, answering every question as honestly as I could. "Why do you think you're the best person to raise Liam?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "Because I love him," I said. "Because I would have been there from the start if I hadn't been deceived. Because he deserves to know the truth. I won't erase Lily from his life. I know she's important to him. But I am his mother and I will fight for him." The evaluator nodded, making notes. I could only hope it was enough. When the evaluator visited Lily and Ethan's house, things didn't go as smoothly. Lily had put on a perfect act for the courtroom, but at home, she was losing control. She was snapping at Ethan, yelling at the evaluator when she didn't like the questions, even trying to coach Liam on what to say. And Liam was confused. He didn't understand why people were suddenly asking him so many questions. Why his parents were fighting. Why a woman who looked strangely familiar was suddenly in his life. The evaluator took notes, her eyes sharp. Lily's facade was cracking. A few nights before the final hearing, Ethan called me. I almost didn't answer. But something told me that I needed to. When I picked up, his voice was strained. "I can't do this anymore," he said. "I can't keep pretending." I stayed silent, waiting for him to continue. "Lily is losing it," he admitted. "She's spiraling. She's terrified of losing Liam and she's taking it out on everyone. I tried to talk to her, but she won't listen." I swallowed hard. "And what do you expect me to do about that?" Ethan sighed. He hesitated. "I wanted you to know that. I'm going to tell the truth in court. About everything. About how we took Liam from you. About how Lily lied. I can't keep doing this." I inhaled sharply. "You're really going to do that?" "Yes," he whispered. "It's time." For the first time since this nightmare began, Ethan was finally doing the right thing. The courtroom was tense on the final day. The judge listened as the evaluator presented her findings, detailing Lily's erratic behavior, Ethan's growing doubts, and Liam's confusion. Then came Ethan's testimony. He stood before the judge and, in a trembling voice, confessed to everything. "We lied," he said. "We let her believe Liam didn't exist. And I should have stopped it. I should have told the truth from the start." Lily went ballistic. "You spineless coward," she screamed. "You're just going to throw me under the bus? After everything we did? After everything we built?" The judge banged his gavel. "Enough." The room fell silent. Lily slumped back in her chair, shaking with rage. She had lost. And she knew it. The judge's ruling came shortly after. Primary custody was awarded to me. Lily was granted supervised visitation, but she was no longer the legal guardian. The moment I heard the words, I broke down. Years of pain, anger, and betrayal crashed over me all at once. I had won. I had my son back. Lily sat in stunned silence, her entire world collapsing around her. Ethan simply exhaled. He had lost just as much as Lily, but unlike her, he accepted it. The moment Liam walked into my house for the first time, I felt my heart burst with emotions. He looked around curiously, his small hands gripping his backpack. "Hi, Liam," I said softly, kneeling to his level. He studied me for a moment. Then, hesitantly, he asked, "Are you my real mom?" Tears pricked my eyes. "Yes," I whispered. "I am." He blinked, thinking. Then, in the softest voice, he asked, "Do you love me?" My heart shattered. I cupped his small face in my hands. "More than anything in the world." He stared at me for a long moment. Then finally he smiled. And for the first time in 6 years I felt whole again. Bringing Liam home for the first time felt like a dream. A dream I had once thought impossible, ripped away from me before I even had a chance to hold him. But now, after years of lies, betrayal, and heartbreak, he was finally where he belonged. As he stepped into my house, his small fingers clutched the strap of his backpack, his eyes darting around the unfamiliar space. I had spent weeks preparing his room, decorating it with colors and toys I knew he might love. But no matter how much I had prepared, I wasn't ready for the reality of it. This wasn't a fairy tale. Liam wasn't just going to wake up one day and see me as his mother. I had to earn that place in his heart. The first few days were tough. Liam was quiet, withdrawn. He would respond when I spoke to him, but only in short sentences, barely engaging. He didn't call me Mom. He didn't call me anything. I could tell he was confused, struggling to understand why his whole life had suddenly changed. One night, as I tucked him into bed, I hesitated before speaking. "I know this is all new for you," I said softly. "And I don't expect you to be okay with everything right away." He stared at the ceiling. "I just want you to know. I love you," I continued. "I always have. And no matter what happens, I'll always be here for you." He didn't respond. But as I stood to leave, I heard his voice, small and hesitant. "Good night." It wasn't much. But it was a start. Despite losing custody, Lily didn't let go easily. She called me constantly, leaving angry voicemails. "You stole him from me," she hissed one day. "You think he's going to love you? He's my son. You'll never replace me." Her words should have hurt. But I had proof of who Liam's real mother was. And every day he was starting to realize the truth too. Still, Lily refused to accept reality. She tried everything. Manipulating family members, spreading rumors about me, even trying to turn Liam against me during her supervised visits. "She's not your real mom," she whispered to him once. "She left you." But Liam was smart. And he was starting to see through her lies. One rainy afternoon, I found Liam sitting in the living room, staring at an old photo of me as a child. I sat beside him, keeping my distance. "You look like me," he murmured. My heart skipped a beat. "I do," I said gently. "Biz, we're family. You got your green eyes from me." He was silent for a moment before finally asking the question that had been haunting him. "Why did you leave me?" I inhaled sharply, fighting back tears. "Oh, sweetheart," I whispered. "I never left you. I never knew you existed." His small brows furrowed. "But Mommy, I mean Lily, she said you left because you didn't want me." I clenched my fists. "Damn Lily." I turned to him, looking him straight in the eyes. "That's not true. Lily took you from me. I would have never left you if I had known. I would have fought for you." Liam's lip trembled, his small hands gripping his shirt. "She lied." I nodded slowly. "Yes, she did." Tears welled in his eyes. "But I love her." I swallowed hard. "I know, baby. And that's okay. You don't have to stop loving her. But I want you to know that I love you too. And I'll never lie to you." He didn't say anything. But for the first time since coming home, he hugged me. Tightly. Like he was afraid I would disappear. And I knew then, this was the moment everything changed. Ethan had been keeping his distance. After the custody battle, he didn't fight to stay in Liam's life. I expected him to disappear completely. But one evening, as I was picking Liam up from school, I found Ethan waiting outside. He looked tired, worn down by guilt. "I just wanted to see him," he admitted. "To know if he's okay." I studied him carefully. "Why now?" Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Because I realized I've spent the last 6 years lying to myself. And now I have nothing. I lost Liam. I lost everything." His voice cracked slightly, and for the first time I saw something I never thought I'd see in him. Regret. "I messed up," he whispered. "I was weak. And I don't expect forgiveness, but I want to make things right. I want to be in his life. The right way." I crossed my arms. "You didn't fight for him in court. Because I knew you deserved him more than I did," he admitted. "But if there's any way I can be a part of his life, even a small part, I'll take it." I sighed, looking over at Liam, who was chatting with his friends. I knew I had every right to deny Ethan any access to Liam. But I also knew that Liam loved him. "I won't make any promises," I said. "But if Liam wants to see you, I won't stop him." Ethan nodded, looking grateful. For the first time in years, I saw the man I had once loved. Not the liar. Not the coward. Just a man who had made terrible mistakes and now had to live with them. Weeks passed and Liam's walls slowly came down. He started calling me Mom. Not because I forced him to. Not because the court had said so. but because he chose to. One night as I tucked him in, he whispered, "You're the best mom ever." Tears burned my eyes. "You're the best son ever." He smiled, gripping my hand as he drifted to sleep. And for the first time in my life I felt whole. I had fought for him. And I had won. Not just in court, but in his heart. Ethan had spent years standing on the wrong side of the truth. For years he had let Lily's lies dictate his choices, had convinced himself that stealing my son was justified. But now that the truth had come out, he had nothing left to hide behind. Liam was my son. And he finally understood what that meant. But understanding wasn't enough. If he truly wanted to be part of Liam's life, he had to earn it. At first I expected Ethan to give up. After everything that had happened, the lies, the courtroom battle, the destruction of his marriage, I thought he would finally walk away for good. But he didn't. Dad, he kept showing up. He wasn't aggressive about it. He wasn't demanding. Case tried. He would call and ask how Liam was doing, even when he knew he wasn't allowed to see him without my permission. He started therapy, something I never thought he'd do. He even wrote me a letter. A real handwritten letter, detailing everything he regretted. It was the most honest thing I had ever received from him. "I know I can never undo what I did," he had written. "But I swear to you I will spend the rest of my life making sure Liam knows I love him. Even if you never forgive me, I hope one day you'll let me prove to him that I can be better." For the first time since this nightmare began, I believed him. I knew I couldn't keep Ethan from Liam forever. Despite everything, Liam loved his father. He had spent 6 years believing Ethan was his protector, his provider. Taking that away from him completely felt cruel. So, after months of waiting, I finally agreed to let them see each other. But under one condition. I would be there. I took Liam to a nearby park on a warm afternoon, letting him run and play before I told him that someone wanted to see him. He looked up at me, his green eyes full of curiosity. "Who?" I swallowed hard, keeping my voice steady. "Your dad." For a moment, Liam said nothing. Then quietly he asked, "Did he leave because he didn't love me anymore?" My heart shattered. I knelt beside him, cupping his small face. "No, baby. He's made a lot of mistakes. But one thing I know is that he loves you." Liam hesitated, then nodded. When Ethan finally walked up to us, he looked nervous. Not like the confident man I had once known. Not like the liar who had stolen my son. He looked like a father desperate for forgiveness. "Hey buddy," he said softly, his voice trembling. Liam blinked up at him, his little hands gripping his sleeves. "Are you mad at me?" Ethan's face crumpled. "Mad at you?" he whispered, kneeling down. "Never. I could never be mad at you." Liam studied him carefully. Then in a small voice he asked, "Do you still love me?" Ethan sucked in a sharp breath, his eyes glistening with tears. "More than anything in the world," he choked out. "And I'm so sorry." Liam stared at him for a long moment. Then to my shock he stepped forward and hugged him. I had expected anger, hesitation, resentment. But Liam was still a child. And children had the biggest hearts of all. As I watched Ethan hold our son, I realized something. I didn't hate him anymore. I had spent so many years hating him, letting my anger and pain define me. But now, standing here watching him finally try to be the man he should have been, I felt free. Not because I forgave him for myself, but because I wasn't carrying the weight of his mistakes anymore. Still, forgiveness wasn't the same as reconciliation. Later that night, as we sat on a park bench while Liam played, Ethan turned to me. "I know I don't deserve your forgiveness," he said. "But, thank you for giving me a chance to be in his life." I met his gaze, calm and steady. "This isn't about you, Ethan. It's about Liam. He deserves to have a father." Ethan exhaled, nodding. "Yeah. He does." He hesitated before speaking again. "Do you think we could ever?" "No," I cut him off gently. He smiled, a little sad but accepting. "I figured," he murmured. "I just had to ask." I nodded. "You had your chance. And now we both need to move forward." Ethan looked toward Liam, watching him laugh as he ran through the grass. "Yeah," he said softly. "We do." And for the first time in years we were finally on the same page. As the months passed, Liam's relationship with Ethan slowly rebuilt itself. It wasn't perfect. Liam still had questions. "Why didn't you come for me sooner? Did you know I had another mom?" Ethan answered every question honestly. No more lies. No more manipulation. And because of that, Liam healed. He was happy. He had a family that truly loved him. And that was all that mattered. The day I knew I was truly free was the day I fell in love again. I had spent so many years afraid to trust, afraid to let anyone in. But then I met someone different. Someone kind, patient. Someone who loved me for me, not for what I had lost but for what I had built. He didn't try to erase my past. He just wanted to be part of my future. And for the first time in a long time I let myself believe in love again. One evening as I watched Liam sleep I realized something. I wasn't just fighting for him anymore. I was fighting for myself. For the girl who had been betrayed. For the woman who had fought her way back. For the mother who had finally, after years of heartbreak, found her son again. I placed a soft kiss on Liam's forehead, brushing his curls back. "I love you," I whispered. And for the first time I truly believed I had won. Not just in court. Not just against Lily. But in life. Because now I was finally at peace. For years, my life had been consumed by betrayal, pain, and the desperate fight to reclaim what was mine. Liam was finally home. Ethan had taken responsibility for his actions. Lily had lost the power she once held over my life. For the first time in 6 years I was free. But freedom also came with an emptiness I wasn't prepared for. For so long my purpose had been fueled by the battle to win Liam back. Now that he was here, safe and loved, I realized that my life had been completely shaped by the past. And I had no idea what the future looked like. I wasn't looking for love. If anything, I had sworn off relationships entirely. How could I trust again? How could I let someone in after everything that had happened? But then he walked into my life. His name was Daniel. We met in the most unexpected way, at one of Liam's school events. I was standing awkwardly by the snack table when Liam ran up to a little girl his age, hugging her tightly. "Liam, who's this?" I asked, smiling at their excitement. "This is my best friend, Ellie," Liam said proudly. "She's the coolest." And that's when I met her father. Daniel had warm brown eyes, a kind smile, and an energy that instantly made me feel at ease. Unlike Ethan, there was no arrogance, no secrecy, just genuine kindness. "Looks like our kids have already decided we should be friends," he joked, shaking my hand. I laughed, and for the first time in years it wasn't forced. At first I kept my distance. I told myself Daniel was just another parent at the school, that I didn't need to get close. But he didn't give up on me. He showed up, not in a grand, sweeping romantic way but in small, meaningful moments. Helping me carry chairs after an event. Sending me a funny meme when he saw I was stressed. Offering a simple, "Hey, how's your day?" that somehow meant so much more than I expected. He was patient. He never pushed. He just let me be me. And one day before I even realized it, I found myself wanting to let him in. The first time Daniel asked me out, I panicked. It had been years since I had been on a date. My last relationship had ended in the worst way imaginable. But something about Daniel made me want to try. So I said yes. The night of our date, I stood in front of my mirror, staring at my reflection. Could I really do this? Liam peeked into my room, grinning. "You look pretty, Mom." I smiled, kneeling down to kiss his forehead. "Thanks, sweetheart. Think I should go?" Liam nodded. "Yeah. Mr. Daniel is nice. And he makes good jokes." I laughed. "That's a pretty important quality, huh?" Liam nodded again, then grew serious. "You deserve to be happy, Mom." And that's when I knew I was ready. Our date wasn't anything extravagant. No fancy restaurant. No dramatic love declarations. Just two people sitting across from each other in a quiet little cafe talking. For the first time I talked about everything. The pain, the betrayal, the fight for Liam. I expected Daniel to run. Instead he listened. Really listened. And when I was done, he reached across the table, taking my hand gently. "You're the strongest woman I've ever met," he said. "And if you ever need someone to remind you of that, I'll be here." Something inside me shifted. Because for the first time in my life I wasn't just hearing words. I believed them. As the weeks passed, Daniel became a constant in our lives. Not in an overbearing way. Not in a way that made me feel trapped. Just in a way that felt right. And more than anything, Liam adored him. "Are you gonna marry Mr. Daniel?" Liam asked one night as I tucked him in. I choked on my laugh. "Whoa, buddy, slow down. I think we should date first." Liam grinned. "Hey. But if you do marry him, can Ellie be my sister?" I smiled, running my fingers through his hair. "We'll see what happens, sweetheart." Because for the first time I wasn't afraid of the future. I was excited for it. One evening I stood outside Ethan's house watching as Liam ran up to hug him. Ethan had changed. He wasn't perfect. He wasn't suddenly a hero. But he had done the work. And for that I was grateful. I turned to leave but Ethan called after me. "Hey," he said. "You seem happy." I paused then smiled. "I am." For the first time in years I truly was. Ethan nodded, a small knowing look in his eyes. "Good," he said. "You deserve to be." And as I walked away I realized something. For years I had let my past define me. But not anymore. Now I was finally living for myself. And that was the greatest victory of all. For years my life had been defined by pain, betrayal, and survival. But standing here now, watching Liam run ahead of me, his laughter echoing in the air, I realized something. I had won. Not just in court. Not just against Lily. Not just in reclaiming my son. I had won my life back. And that was the most important victory of all. I hadn't seen or heard from Lily in months. After losing custody of Liam, she had spiraled, losing her grip on the perfect life she had built from lies. Her marriage with Ethan was officially over. She had fought for visitation rights, but her behavior during the custody battle had destroyed her credibility. The judge granted her limited, supervised visits, but even then she barely showed up. And Liam didn't ask about her anymore. Maybe deep down he had started to understand the truth, that love isn't about possession. It's about honesty, about trust. Lily had lost both. And in doing so she had lost everything. Liam had finally adjusted to life with me. At first I worried that the transition would be too hard, that he would feel torn between two lives. But as the days turned into months, Liam grew happier. He started calling me mom without hesitation. He stopped asking about Lily. He thrived in school, made new friends, and for the first time in his young life he was truly at peace. And for the first time so was I. Daniel had become a constant presence in our lives, not as a replacement for Ethan, but as a steady, loving figure who respected our journey. He never rushed anything. He never pushed. He just showed up. Every day in 1,000 little ways. And I had fallen in love with him, not because I needed him but because I finally realized. Love, when it's real, doesn't take. It gives. One afternoon as Liam played in the backyard, I sat with my old journal, the one I had kept through my darkest years. Flipping through the pages I saw the old entries. The pain, the heartbreak, the anger. There were nights when I had thought I would never recover. Nights when I had convinced myself I was broken beyond repair. But looking back now, I barely recognized that woman anymore. She had fought. She had endured. And now, she had survived. I closed the journal, smiling to myself. The past didn't own me anymore. It never would again. One evening Ethan stopped by. Liam was at a sleepover, so it was just the two of us. Two people who had once been everything to each other, now just familiar strangers. He hesitated before speaking. "I wanted to say thank you," he said, "for letting me still be part of his life." I nodded. He stepped up. "That's all that matters now." He shifted uncomfortably. "And I wanted to apologize. Not just for Liam, but for everything. For Lily. For what I did to you." I exhaled, studying him carefully. "You hurt me, Ethan," I said. "More than I ever thought I could be hurt. But I don't hate you anymore." He blinked, surprised. "You don't?" I shook my head. "No. Because if I kept hating you, it would mean I was still letting you control my life. And I'm done with that." He gave me a small, bittersweet smile. "You're really happy now, aren't you?" he asked. I smiled back. "Yeah, I am." And I meant it. The next morning I woke up to the sound of Liam giggling in the kitchen. I walked in to find him sitting on the counter, helping Daniel mix pancake batter, his little hands covered in flour. They both turned to me, grinning. "Morning, Mom." Liam chirped. Daniel winked. "We're making a mess, breakfast." I laughed, shaking my head. This was my life now. A life built on truth, on love, on second chances. No more betrayal. No more pain. No more looking back. Just moving forward. And for the first time in years I knew. Everything was exactly as it should be.